To build a new community, we begin with relationships. Change. Neighborhood change. Neighborhood change leaves a different community in the same place as its predecessor. To build a new community, we begin with relationships. In April of 2003, when we at the Greater Southwest Development Corporation learned of its selection as a LISC MacArthur New Community Program site, we also learned that the program will begin with the creation of a quality of life plan, a plan that would chart programs and projects needed to create a healthy community. The planning firm of Camaros was scheduled to start work the following October. During the 6-month hiatus, we decided to undertake a strategic prequel activity. Our community has experienced a significant ethnic, racial, and demographic change over the last decade. To begin, we enlisted the Southwest Organizing Project, or SWOP, as a full partner in the effort. SWOP is a tenured grassroots community organization composed of local churches, mosques, schools, block clubs, and others. Greater Southwest and SWOP intended to hold 100 one-on-one relational meetings with new local leaders. By the end of this process, we had spoken to 114 key leaders and had collected reams of data. The survey data was interesting. No surprise that there were lots of comments about housing, health, safety, education, economic development, and jobs. But the most fascinating findings were the identification of the top strengths and the top weaknesses, those which were mentioned more than any others. One of the top strengths was cohesion, or connectiveness within the community. One of the top weaknesses was also neighborhood cohesion. What did this mean? How could it be that so many people looking at the same community had opposing views about the quality of social connectiveness? Well, as it turns out, that while they were all talking about the same neighborhood, they were not talking about the same community. Those that saw cohesion as a weakness were referring to the community as it used to be, when it was mostly white, mostly Catholic, in a solid working and middle-class neighborhood. This community is nearly gone. The new community that is becoming is burgeoning with minority population, possessing an eclectic mix of race, ethnic, religious, and economic diversity. We are indeed becoming a new community, but we have not become that community quite yet. We've learned that our work is really about nurturing a new, nascent community into existence. Creating connections amidst and across diversity became the best strategy to build a new community. Creating connections became the theme of our planning process. Creating connections has become the theme of our plan. Connecting the dots so the larger picture forms. Connecting the dots among and across neighborhoods, institutions, schools, our hospital, parks, churches, and mosques, businesses and opportunities for commerce and employment. On November 20th, 2003, we invited 75 of those leaders who were interviewed to come to a review of the survey findings and to begin the neighborhood planning process. 1 week before the meeting, 85 had RSVP'd. When the meeting began, there were 175 people in the room and another 30 who couldn't get in. The interviews had worked not only to gather data, but to generate enthusiasm and engagement. That evening, we talked over the survey findings. We discussed the schools, healthcare providers, social service agencies, religious institutions, and the family settings where values and skills are engendered. We also discussed our sources of commerce and economic opportunity. We realized that in the community, as it used to be, there were tightly knit connections among all of these components. But we now recognize that those connections have been evaporating as our former community was dissipating. We spoke of the need to make connections among people, organizations, institutions, businesses, and government. We discussed the need to convene a planning body to envision how these connections could be made. That evening, our quality of life planning process was imagined and inaugurated. That evening, new relationships were formed. That evening, people pledged to further create new relationships. That evening, people left with great energy and passion, eager to begin the process of planning to build a new community. On Saturday, January 31st, 2004, we reconvened the body that assembled in November for a day-long visioning session. We asked ourselves to imagine the best future for our community. Who would benefit from it? Where would we see changes and development taking place? By the end of the session, we had envisioned our community's future. It was now time to begin to flesh out the important details. It was time to plan the programs and the projects that would accomplish this vision. A very important moment occurred at the conclusion of our visioning session. Planners gathered in the center of the hall and bowed their heads as a larger group raised their hands over them and, led by the Catholic, Protestant, and Islamic clergy, blessed them, charged them with the important task of creating a plan. When the Quality of Life Planning Commission convened, our first task was to identify the initiatives needed to accomplish the vision and the issues which would hinder its accomplishment. Once identified, these items were organized under the following concepts. How can we earn? How can we learn? How can we play? How we prey on ourselves? How we take care of ourselves? How we attract others to our community? How we enact in public life? Over the next 5 months, the Planning Commission organized itself into working groups according to these categories. Additionally, through relationships generated by Holy Cross Hospital and LIST with the Chicago Department of Health, a collateral planning group was organized to simultaneously discuss health. As each month passed, the program and projects took shape. We would meet and plan and then connect with others outside the Planning Commission to keep our planners connected to the larger group. On May 8th, the Planning Commission met for a day-long planning charrette. At this session, we reviewed and prioritized the programs and project ideas that had been developed. We also identified which organizations, agencies, or institutions would need to play a role in the implementation of these initiatives. From July through September, we conducted a series of one-on-one meetings with those groups, seeking their commitment to undertake the work. By the end of these meetings, we had generated 62 commitments to move various initiatives forward. Commitments to do the work and to pursue the desired outcomes turn the plan into a social contract. At the end of this period, our Camaros planners and our scribes, provided by LIST, worked on the creation of the plan document. So armed with a plan and commitments to implement portions of that plan, we set out to bring that plan back to the neighborhood assembly. Each of the organizations promised to bring the constituency to the meeting. Southwest Organizing Project generated attendance commitment from among its member institutions. That evening, over 600 constituents from our community filled the hall. Almost half of those attending used wireless headsets to hear the Spanish translation of the proceedings. We began the agenda with the focus statement that illustrated the importance of relationships for building our new community. Relationships among people, organizations, agencies, institutions, and businesses. Next, we highlighted each of our 8 strategy areas. Housing.
To establish what we are now calling new community housing connections.
63rd Street redevelopment.
This plan is not about nostalgia. It's about deciding how to best use our land, about creating strong retail areas that meet the needs of the neighborhood people as well as the needs of modern retailing.
Leadership development.
I realize that as a parent, we have the responsibility to teach our children to care and work for our community. To teach my son how to be a good citizen, I must model it from him. Leadership development was so important to me because it gave me the skills and confidence to be a good model for my son and how to be involved in public life.
Safety.
It was another shooting, and a bullet hit my house, barely missing my mom. I got threatened, my family got threatened, then my garage got torched. I went back to the police, and they stepped up even more and made more arrests. People saw the police present and saw the threat was no longer there and began to lose their fear. That day, we became united.
Healthcare.
We envision establishing a community health center that provides quality health care to the medically underserved area on the southwest side of Chicago. This clinic would be open to the entire community and people of all backgrounds and beliefs.
Jobs and economic opportunity.
We are working with the Local Initiative Support Corporation, or LIST, and other potential partners to determine the feasibility of opening a local center that supports working families with financial education, employment referrals, access to financial products, and assistance to applying for available government programs. I would just like to say, it's been far too long. We have been a community where local companies and neighbors who reside across the street from one another have absolutely no relationship. They don't even know each other. This plan begins to change this. When we succeed, more of our residents will be able to receive income benefits offered by local companies, and more of our local businesses will be able to benefit from the skills and the hard work of our neighbors. And I think we can do this. We definitely can do this. Thank you very much.
Recreation.
In May, I gathered one of my daughters, three of my grandchildren, took them to the park to play baseball. As we went to the park, we collected 9 more kids. At the park, we found 15 more kids and made 2 teams. Every day we went back, we collected more kids who we didn't even know. On the 3rd day, I promised the 30 kids that we would have 10 teams, trophies, uniforms, and food. I had faith that we were going to get this, what we needed. With God, all things are possible. My wife was worried that I was raising the hopes of these kids and that their hearts would be broken if this didn't come true. So I started knocking on doors. The first person I spoke to was Lou at Toyota on Western, and I told him what I was trying to do, and he gave me $600. I walked down from 63rd to Cicero and back, then down to Western to 79th and Ashland, and back up to 63rd to Western, knocking on every door asking for help. I walked all over the city for a month. By the time I was done, I raised $11,000.
Education.
So what do we need in this community? As you walk in, I don't know if you noticed the poster boards on the doors. Did you guys notice that? Yeah. Yeah? You saw that? Well, we saw what Everhart students want. They want dance centers, more space to have fun. They want more mentors. The principals that we work with in this area need more resources. But what we want, ultimately, is every single child and youth and adult to reach their full potential.
That meeting reached a crescendo as the crowd chanted their support for the plan.
Do you think we can do this? If you do, say, "Si se puede," yes we can. All right, next. Everybody stand up. Everybody up. All right, I want you all to grab the hand of the person next to you. I want you to put your hands together. They stand, they raise their hands and say, "Si se puede, yes we can! Si se puede, yes we can! Si se puede, yes we can!"
As a final act to recognize the agreement to implement the plan as our social contract, we requested that those in the attendance sign the new community banner. As the people filed out of Everhart School that evening, they dispersed among an older neighborhood. That was beginning to feel like a new community.